Hello there. As you can read from the title, we will be talking about how good is his Summoning, a lore book from the Wayward Realms game. I will be reading through the book at the start, and if you don't want to listen to it, you can skip to the analysis part. The timestamp will be in the description below and in the comments. If you want to read the story yourself, the story will also be in the comments and description below as well. But before we get to the reading, I want to establish how I'll be evaluating the story. In my view, the books and lore books in general have three guidelines. One is to tell us about something about the world, meaning it gives us information that is in the game world we are playing, or it is a part of it. Two, is it relevant to the game, meaning the story has something in it that we will see in game, whether this is a character, faction, place, or an idea. Now, both of the first 2 points are related, but the difference is that the point one is more akin to world building in general, adding stuff that would be used later on, and while point two is the game using that world building, it being interactable. Third point is it a good story? Now that is a fairly subjective, but I don't think it will be that hard to understand my reasonings why I think this is a good or bad book. But I think it will shows all these points how well it can accomplish on these guidelines. So, with that being said, let us read through the story. In the darkest night, just as we were told to do by the witch, we stepped towards the pond's chilling shore, cold fumes rising towards us, the sow in tow. There we found a large flat stone, slightly sunken into the pond, a fowl with an aura of black magic so strong we instinctively held our step. This was the place. As much as I longed for insights of the sage, I could not shake off the evil exuding from the pond. I stammered as I expressed my doubts that this was such a good idea. Kelk shook his head, growled something underneath his beard, then rounded me. Psych, you want to know it as much as I do. I did not answer. I lowered my head, burdened by disappointed tone. Right? He repeated, in his eyes wide with unease as he grabbed me by my shoulders. And so I sulked forth an unconvincing yes, holding out a rope for me. He demanded sternly, then help me bind her. I followed suit just as he led the sow next to the stone and grabbed her by her front legs to hold her in place. I threw the rope below her chest, leading it around her hind legs and pulling it close. She was startled and would have run were it not for my brother's weight, who was then struggling to fasten her forelegs closed. I knew that what was expected of me, and immediately skipped forward, taking the rope ends from him, quickly finishing the knot he began, signaling me with a quick jerk of his head to take a step away. He leaped off, letting her weight fell onto the stone. Still squirming under the binds, I nearly felt pity for the poor beast. Nearly this was far more important than her life. My brother then bade me to seat myself on the ground. Pulling forth her ritual ingredients, he poured for us both from dusty flask the mushroom wine, deftly stolen from the hermit at Fort Elmsk. The brown liquid foul with the blessing of Umbril. I swallowed the burning concoction with great difficulty, barely suppressing my urge to spew forth to cleanse my innards. My brother struggled similarly with the hard beverage. Then it came to the consumption of the fruit. They were round green growths the size of grapes, though with a leathery skin that seemed much thicker. The flesh, while still bitter, did well in alleviating the bruise far more despicable taste from our tongues. As we gazed upon, we saw how the black of night transformed into radiant green, how the scalps of the trees became of such a lively pink that no cherry could hope to compete, and how the songs began. It already decided at home that I would caw while he would croak. So I took forth my feathers and waved them as we had practice, behind the stables in the dark of night. I fluttered and danced in circles, while my brother jumped and hopped just in the opposite direction. A frogskin in hand, after many cycles, the pink of the trees began to bleed into the skies like pyres, and so we began the recantations given to us by the hag, and called upon the all-seeing, the all-wanting, the all-knowing. 100 prayers of praise made unto him, the heavens themselves joining our dance as pink threatened to drown out all that was left from the green, while the barks of the trees began to sing. Thus my brother brought forth our most prized possession, unfittingly held in a bird cage, one of the mysterious one's own servants, one of the 1,000-eyed toads. When we purchased it from the hag, it was but a dark blue, but now I see it was pitch black, with white words of mystery dancing upon its skin. And so my brother, as his role demanded, was the first to let his tongue dance over and between the 1,000 eyes on its slimy back before giving it to me. I too, though reluctantly, took part in the gifts of the Malruk servant. When I lifted my tongue, numbered by the toxins of the beast, I saw that my brother had truly become the toad, and judging by his gaze, I too had truly become the crow. Under the 3 great blessings, I felt as free as never before. No worry could ever break my tranquility. Under any other circumstance, I would have felt queasy about killing any animal. But when Kalk gave me the ashen dagger, I leapt upon the sow and swiftly hacked at her throat, devotedly calling on the court of toads to present him our offer, my hands running red with her blood, and then rose to dance the last dance with Kalk as he chanted the final summon. We call on you, the blind king, your eyes seated for Fortuna's parting gift. We call on you, the lost king, your mind broken upon the spires of Arshad. We call you, doomed king, your domain devoured with your final word. We call on you to embedel your wisdom and auguries to partake in your atonement. And so we danced on for another 2 hours, the pink pyres of trees scalps slowly receding, nearly the end of our visions. Kalk fell to the ground and pounded it with anger. Why, oh why, is he not hearing us? We followed every step laid out by his followers. We embedded the gifts and danced the dances. We offered him He bellowed forth his own gasp, cutting him off before he stormed towards me. The dagger, he demanded. Give it to me. I hesitated, his erratic behavior starting a great fear into my heart. Wildly he grabbed the dagger that I had pulled towards me in fear. He wrenched it at with such a force that we were thrown to the ground, rolling about the sow's cold corpse. He punched and kicked me, bit at me, and in that struggle he drew my blood with my own blade. The crimson dropping, dancing through the moonlight in 1,000 colors, I never felt less elven. My hand was guided by an unknown force as I, foaming at the mouth, cawed one last time, and as I looked up I found my dagger embedded in my brother's chest. Surprise absolving him of his anger. Drenched in his own boiling blood, I let his corpse fall aside, leaving it slumped against the hollowed altar as I sunk to the ground in horror and confusion. I did not understand what power had come over me, not yet, and that is, not knowing that it was a great gift that I had been chosen. For as I lamented, I did not see the crows that began circling the pond above. I did not hear the toads. Those thunderous voices began to swell in a choir that grew ever louder. When I took notice, I gazed upon my surroundings and saw how the blood flowing from Kelk's breast was being drawn over the water's surface, forming a circle of magnificent size. The sounds grew deafening to the point of pain, while the pond's surface was pierced from below by a shattered golden crown, formed by a bald, pale head adorned with only a handful of long grey hairs. What next appeared was not the body of a man, but a sick, gargantuan, pitch-black toad seated on a rising white petal. And then there was silence. The singing ceased in an instant, and his blind eyes seemed to draw me in. He then opened his mouth wide, revealing 1,000 eyes within, and spoke in a thunderous, divine voice. What do you seek, mortal? I cowered before his imposing presence, the effects of the potent ingredients washed away by his divine aura. I was shaken when he commanded suddenly and angrily, Speak or perish. Knowledge, master. Knowledge is what I seek. He seemed content, the great visage smiling briefly. Knowledge, you say? Once I also desired wisdom, secrets, and omens. For knowledge begets power, and that you understand. However, do you really believe you are ready to hold such power? I pondered for a moment, concerned at what he was implying. How could he, of all beings, not know that we weren't here for his grand wisdoms? Or was this a trap? But an urge from my subconscious, or from form long dead, Fortuna herself, I however disregarded my suspicions and bluntly answered, yes. Once more he smiled, and then this time a thunderous quaking laughter burst forth. So shall it be, he announced, his monstrous mouth opened wide and his tongue shot forth, pulling me into the great magnificent eye at its center. Passing by that ever-turning storm of 1,000 eyes, I came to land in a space of pure endless white. As I pondered the meaning of it, the ground below me collapsed into darkness. I was in a hallway walking towards a closed door, from behind the wall came the cries of a woman. I opened the door and found my late mother on the kitchen floor, sobbing as she held her reddened eyes, my angry father hulking above her. My mother halted her cries abruptly and gazed at me desperately. Kelk, go back to bed. The world turned back again. My brother, I contemplated, confused by what I had witnessed. How? Iris, a woman, said plainly behind me, prompting me to turn around. She was a doppelgänger of advanced age, maybe in her 40s, holding a light elven babe to her chest. Ares, she repeated again, a tone of love tinting what she probably wanted to be an unemotional plea. Sister, please take him, as tradition of our people. I turned around once more, facing the door of her house, feeling the troubled expression on my face. I don't think I should, Reyes. Mark is already making it difficult with one child around. I felt the other woman grab me by the arm, turning me around once more. Please, sister, I know of no better person to entrust his life. Hesitant, I eyed the babe, he returning my gaze and grabbing after my hand. I felt a fire set ablaze in my heart, and immediately took the babe into my arms. The dark elf nodded, then sighed, before bidding me farewell. I had never known what the Ara was not my brother's blood. While my adopted body carried the babe into the house, my adopted mind thinking up the little one's name. I, the real I, was overwhelmed by a sense of frustration. Why not tell me, mother? Why did you not tell me? The pain then nearly brought me to my knees. The world around me burned into 100 scenes from my childhood. Kelk meeting me for the first time, my drunken father despising me, angry at my mother for letting his sister force a child on her, and many more visions before I was once again completely immersed in one. I was shouting obscenities at my mother, she sobbing next to the hearth, and then I struck her a lot harder than usual. I could feel it, bringing her down to the ground, my mother's skull breaking open on the hearth, the eye-core of life quelling forth. My lent persona panicked while I myself became sick. Father has always told me she had abandoned us. I dragged my mother's body into the forest under Dela's pale light, haphazardly covering her under dirt and leaves. I fell to my hands and knees and vomited onto the cold ground, sickened by the man I called father, for whom I had gone to such great lengths. In my despair the Lord mocked me. I have brought you to your knees with but a taste of truth, mortal. Do you still think yourself ready for my gifts? I did not hesitate. Yes, my life was a lie. What did I still have to lose? His silent nod rendered the very ground on which I crawled into a pool of 1,000 eyes. I was devoured by the waves in the maelstrom. The sight of each aperture bestowed upon me, I saw a promising young wizard encasing himself in his armor, never to leave it again. A worried maiden espying the well-armed midwife sent for by her lady's kin. A red-cloaked figure fighting a leviathan of enormous size, and a man gazing into the night sky to witness Fortuna's shattering. Each sight departed faster than the last, until all that was followed was a blur into a storm of 1,000 eyes. Yet every single one was burnt into my soul. At last the final vision I was to receive was the one we sought. I saw where the highwaymen buried the tax collector's treasure, before being caught and hanged. Oh, what a trivial sight in the grand scheme of things, a pathetic footnote compared to all I saw before. As the vortex subsided, the Lord's voice boomed forth questioningly. Which memories will you keep? I was in disbelief. How could I let go of anything after seeing all? How could I ever choose? Distressed, I begged him, please let me keep them all. I want them all. His rebuttal was to repeat louder. Which will you keep? Knowledge has a price, and for all your offering is not enough. All of it, I proclaimed anew. Master, please take whatever you want. Just let it be all of... Before I could even finish this sentence, the giant man-toad nodded, dissolving me into eyes. I awoke before the altar the same as I left this world, and felt myself bereft of my experience. I panicked, mad with desire, pounding my fists bloody on the earthen ground, as an urge arose within me, an order from the Lord. I did not dare resist as I tore out my own eyes, greedily consuming them, ready turning every lost vision to me. He heard my pleas and found me worthy of a duty more important than any mortal could ever hope to understand. As I was lost in a joyous thought, I began to see myself from a beaked face, perched on my brother's corpse. I bade the observer to join me, and they obliged. I did not leave the hallowed grove a blind man, but one truly capable of sight. So how does the book do on point 1? It tells us the story of the two brothers attempting a ritual to find where treasure is hidden. Who the ritual is for is not given any name, but what is clear is that the creature is similar to an eldritch being. From the references it is being used, as we can see from here, all-seeing, the all-wanting, the all-knowing. 100, like, these names aren't necessarily what it's called, but rather it's more describing what it is, and this is very similar to what eldritch beings are in fiction. And the way it is written is similar to a dream, and the way the creature is summoned from a pond being filled with blood, its mouth opening to the void, thousands of eyes in it. With all that what all of that is trying to tell us is that 1, the Wayward realms have eldritch beings. Now, how many there are or how they affect the world on a daily or large basis is not said, but that can be seen as an intentional decision to add mystery to it all. 2, how rituals work. At least for eldritch beings, they are similar to how old medieval witches would boil, chop, and kill and whatnot. It invokes a sense of unknowing and dread, something that's mystical. And again, that is an intentional choice, and I think a choice that is well done. 3rd point, the creature grants gifts of knowledge, but at a price, as you might expect, but it will give you what you want, and then say which piece of knowledge do you wish to keep. The perspective character asks for all of the knowledge, wants to get it all, but isn't allowed to do that, is only allowed to get one piece of knowledge. Now, that being may be specific to the creature themselves or the other eldritch beings in this one. Normally, how these deals would be is that I'm not going to tell you, and then they would say, I want you to tell me, and then they would say, okay, cool, unless you do this sacrifice, and then they do the sacrifice. In this one, it's a bit of reverse. It's more, I give you the information, now please tell me which one you would like, but if you want more, you have to sort of bargain with me for more. You have to give me something more. Now again, could be up for speculation if this is a trait all eldritch beings have in the Wayward realms, or if it's specifically to this one creature. It is also worthy to note that the story doesn't tell us how it differs from other eldritch beings in fiction. So, for example, in the Lovecraft mythos, it tells that the eldritch beings are undescribable, unknowing, and while it isn't necessarily hard to reach or speculate that the Wayward Realms one would be unknowing and unthinkable beings, it does seem like they're not supposed to be that sort of thing. So again, other examples are like, do they corrupt over time? Do they take more than what you can give? Stuff like that. Now, that can be an intentional choice by the writers so that the players can find that out themselves when they play the game, but that is just speculation. Then there is the indirect information the story tells us. We understand that there are two kinds of elves. The high elf, but I'm unsure if that is the name that they're given in lore, and the dark elves. The interaction between the two seems like there aren't other dark elves and high elves in other fantasy games or media. The dark elf character is the true mother to the perspective character, whose adopted mom is the high elf. What does that mean in terms of how either subrace was made? I'm not particularly sure, but it is interesting to see this sort of different dynamic in play. Also, the perspective character laments that the ritual they are doing makes them feel unelfy, so that implies that the elves are still similar to the current conception of elves, how elves are viewed, such as, they're all high and mighty and stuck up. The story also gives us names for places. Fort Enska, Spies of Arshod, Fortuna, Shattered Mood of the Realm, Sages are also mentioned, but it's not clear what they are or what they do. The perspective character at the end becomes a sage, so perhaps it means the person of immense knowledge and power, or something more similar to like a D&D warlock where they have a patron that gives them all their power. But again, that's more speculation. Sages as well in the history are seen as wise leaders, but I don't necessarily think that's where the inspiration is being pulled from for why they're calling the perspective character a sage at the end. Now, whether those are just name drops or actual places we will visit is unknown, except for the moon, maybe. I'm not sure, but moons in the Ted Pearson's games have a lot of significance, and so I'm not necessarily sure if this will also have a significance to the same degree or lesser. I do remember from watching interviews with him, that the moon is important, but I'm not necessarily sure how important yet, because obviously, spoilers, they don't want to give everything away immediately. But their inclusion does make the world feel bigger, alongside with all the other bits of information. Now, what also should be mentioned is the tone of the story, and how it reflects the world. It continues the trend of framing the Wayward Realms as a dark and miserable place to live in. The perspective character has an abusive father, and how beings like this creature exist. It also gives us, the player, the understanding that the world is dour. So I say the book does a really great job at informing the player on what the world is about and what information it has. So, on to point 2. Now, I don't think it does as well as previous books, and this is necessarily due to the nature of the story that is being made, and that story is more of a personal one with incidental reveals on what the world may contain. It doesn't really give the player a lot of understanding of, okay, so you should expect this in-game. It more is like, this is the broad general overview of the world inside the story of a character. Now again, it lacks context, but some things that you could say that could be in the game, again more speculation, is that the Eldritch being in the game could be similar to the Daedra in Daggerfall. Now, the Wayward Realms is a spiritual successor to Daggerfall, and in Daggerfall, you got to meet the Daedra, who could give you powerful artifacts and power. This Eldritch being may serve a similar function, so you may do some sacrifices, or have to meet them at a specific date, or year, or whatever conditions you have to find them, and then they will give you a quest, or ask you for a sacrifice, and they'll give you, money, power, or some other gift of theirs. But again, that is speculation on my part. I don't necessarily think you should be expecting more information. I think you should be waiting until more information is released to form a more coherent opinion. Again, there are other ways to know this, but I don't necessarily think this book really tells you that, okay, these things are like Daedra and they're going to be in the game. Overall, the story doesn't have too many relevant points that would be in the games as far as I can tell. But again, it may have it, but we can only speculate. We lack context on how it would affect the world. Now, for the last point, is it a good story? I think so. It feels like a slow burn, which I like a lot of the times. I like the sense of seeing the perspective character go from doubt to fear to anger to sadness, then finishing in a corruptive state, as to keep all the knowledge he has seen, which has shattered his worldview and his own view of himself, begins to bargain with the creatures who will only accept his eyes being gouged, and what implies that he may have eaten them, or describing how he gouged them. Obviously, in the last bit, if I can find it quickly. Over here. As I was lost, I began to see myself, no, that's one. Panicked mad, pounding my fists bloody on the earthen ground as an urge arose within me, an order from the Lord. I did not dare to resist as I tore out my own eyes, greedily consuming them, returning every lost vision to me. So this could be describing that he actually ate his eyes, or describing that he tore out his eyes greedily, and in that sort of way he's like consuming them. He's ripping them out from his sockets and consuming them essentially. But again, I don't necessarily think it matters. It's just more to illustrate that, yeah, he's quite in the ballpark of this creature now. So yeah, I think it is a really good book with a really good twist and turns, and I think it does a lot to inform the player on what the world is like. Not necessarily sure on how much of the book is relevant to the game that you'll be playing, but I do think it is a really well done book and a good addition to the game, and I can't wait to do the next story. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do tell me.